One of my favorite tools is Google Earth for allowing students to create content that has a geo-specific approach. I wanted to walk you through today how to use Google Earth through an understanding of the basic features, but also an understanding of how to build projects and how students can build projects both individually and collaboratively. So I'm going to share my screen with you and we'll hop right into Google Earth. I thought what I would do first is walk you through a tutorial about what Google Earth offers. So one of my favorite things right off the bat here are these clouds. So these clouds are about 15 minutes old. So it's kind of cool to think of what the planet looks like, at least cloud cover, just 15 minutes ago. I think that's really kind of neat. When we go to Google Earth, we get a couple of features over here on the left. The top one is the search. Then we have Voyager, I'm feeling lucky. We have projects, we have map style, and then the measure distance and area. The top one here, the 3 lines, the menu, shows you who signed into this account. So here I am signed into this specific account, but I could also be signed out and view it. So Google Earth is one of those products that's called an additional service by Google. So as an additional service, sometimes our students don't have access to it, depending on how they have been, what access has been given to them in our schools. But to create with it, they will need to be signed in. So right now, what I'm going to walk you through are the features that are accessible pretty easily. So first of all, the search feature here, if I click search and I go to a place like the Eiffel Tower, the Eiffel Tower in Paris, of course, the one in Vegas is okay, but the Paris one's a little cooler. So this takes us down and we have some 3D rendering that's going to take place in a nice looking graphical spin. This is done with LiDAR technology. So those are literally planes flying over and scanning the ground cover to develop these trees and buildings and this beautiful Eiffel Tower. Now, if you look in the bottom corner of the screen, the bottom right corner, you see camera and feet, you see the latitude and longitude, and then you see height, elevation. If I move my mouse to the base of the Eiffel Tower, you'll notice it's at 107 feet above sea level. And as I move my mouse up the Eiffel Tower, it's actually giving me the height of the Eiffel Tower. And so I went up to 1,000 feet just by moving my mouse. In the bottom right, we have a few other features here. One is this compass. I can click the compass, and you'll see that it changes it to magnetic north. I have 2D, so I could click 2D and get a flat image. And then I have Street View. So this is Pegman. If I click Pegman, it reveals blue lines and blue dots. Now, a lot of the blue lines are Google Earth or Google Street View cars imagery. So for example, if I click on one of these lines, it's probably a Google image. Not always, but usually. We can tell in a moment here. Right, so down here in the left-hand corner, you see there's a Google image. That means this image was taken by Google. So I can move my mouse around. I'm grabbing the screen. It's a 360. Eiffel Tower is probably around here somewhere, right? I think I was pretty close. Oh, I went down a bridge. Now I can click on this arrow and zip up the road, just like I'm driving through the streets of Paris. It's a little safer this way, I think. And then to leave this screen, in the upper left-hand corner, I have a back arrow. Now with the back arrow, I thought it would be relevant to show you again, if I click Pegman one more time, that there's a blue dot. So these blue dots, because this is a popular place, there's lots of them. These are usually taken by individual people like you and me using Google's free Street View app. Sometimes these photos are done right on a phone. Other times they're done with a 360 camera like a Ricoh Theta. So as I move around here, first of all, I can see in the bottom left-hand corner, this is a private individual who made this. I see a shoe. That's a little odd, right? I think if I scan over here, that guy's missing a shoe. Maybe it's over here. If I keep moving, I see some twins. Those are not twins. There's a chance that the person using the Street View app took a step to the left or right and kept working and scanned this person twice. It's kind of cool though, right? All right, so I'll leave this Street View imagery and go back up. Also, I'm going to go a little out of order here on the left-hand side. You have the I'm feeling lucky button. And if you click that, it takes you to a different place on the planet. So most of the time when we click this, we all go to a different place. And I think that's kind of cool. If you're doing some kind of creative writing with students and you want each of them to go to a different location and perhaps write about it, they could click the I'm feeling lucky button and write about it. You have some textual content on the side from a Wikipedia article and some photos as well if you want to look at those. Here I am at in Miami Beach. So if I zoom in over here to Flagler Memorial Island, I want to show you another tool that's kind of cool. Over here on the left-hand side is the measure tool. So I'm going to click measure, and then my mouse turns into a plus sign. And here I can click and move around the island. And you'll notice it's giving me in the top right-hand corner the distance that I'm traveling. And when I close this loop, it gives me both area and perimeter. So there's a really cool math tool to use, area and perimeter. If I zoom down a little more, I can adjust this. I can move it a little bit closer. Every time I move, I get a new dot that allows me to make it a little bit more exact. This is a feature that lived in Google My Maps, and now here it is on Google Earth. I think that's a pattern we're going to see more of if I was to predict. The area and perimeter are changing dynamically. I can also use the drop-down arrow and change it to centimeters, meters, kilometers, nautical miles. And also, a little challenge for you, do a little Google search for what a smoot is. It's, I'm going to let you look it up. Look up a smoot. It's kind of a funny story. A little shocking to see it here. This image, if you wanted to share what they found, maybe you give them area and perimeter and tell them to find a location on the planet that has that area and perimeter, maybe a little backwards thinking. They could do a screenshot of this and then turn that in as an assignment. Back over here to the left-hand side, I'll clear that off. We have Voyager Stories. Voyager Stories are amazing stories that Google has put together and that we're actually able to create through the new Google Earth Projects feature, which we'll come to in a few minutes. So for example, if I scan down here, I've got editor's picks, games, layers, and the games, you have some cool games. My favorite is Carmen Sandiego, where it pulls up what looks like a super old school game, like when I was a kid, because I'm kind of old. So I click begin the chase, and I've got Google Earth on the left-hand side, and I'll have some text content on the right-hand side once the game begins. So here we go. We're going to try to find Carmen Sandiego. Clues on the right, Google Earth on the left. The Google Earth locations, I can zoom in. This is interactive. I can use my 3D. I can use Pegman. All these features that I had accessible outside of this Voyager experience, I can use here. To leave it, I'll use the top blue arrow, and it pulls me right out of the Carmen Sandiego experience. There's a lot more in here, some really cool ones with the layers. I love the layers on the planet. Here's one showing polar ice coverage. So if I zoom out here, it'll automatically zoom me out. This was created with support from Google and the National Snow and Ice Data Center. And if I hit play up here, this is actually going to take me through the sea ice extent and how it has changed over time. So this is wrapping layers right over the top of the Google Earth that we've been looking at. Now, you can also search some of these. It's a little wonky to click through all of these to find something that's relevant for your classroom. But in the top left-hand corner, if we go back, we can use the search tool. And here we can type in a topic. Like I'll put in a really exciting one called congressional redistricting. Doesn't that sound exciting? And notice it says Voyager Stories. So it's saying there's a Voyager story about that. So if I click on congressional redistricting, it takes me here. And if you look really close, you'll notice that I wrote this with my colleague Judith Painter. We wrote it for Google about 18 months ago, and they built this for us. And what's cool is when we dive into this, the things I'm about to share with you, we can actually make ourselves now. We no longer need to send it to Google and have them make it for us. So you've got Google Earth with pins. We have on the right-hand side here some images. We can click on those images and we can see a larger image. And tab through them. Then we have the X over here. Scroll down on the right for text content, and then use the arrow to go through each individual scene. Pretty exciting stuff, right? It's appropriate to be excited. All right, now to actually create with this, oh, I have one more feature to share with you. I almost forgot about. Over here on the left above the measuring, you have map style. So map style, if I zoom out a little bit, I think it might be a little more relevant. Let's do a little bit of this, 2D, there we go. So map style lets you change what you see. So if I click clean, it's not going to have any borders. Exploration has borders and roads, everything. Or I can customize what I see on my map. I tend to just leave it at exploration. It works for my workflow. All right, so the other feature that we haven't played with yet, and it's the big one, it's the one that allows us to create, is this one over here, which 6 months ago, that probably, or a little longer, yeah, about 6 months ago, it would have had a bookmark there. Now it's called projects. So if we click projects, I can create a new project. And so I'm going to say create a new project in Google Drive, right? So Google Drive would allow me to share that file. All right, so we'll open it up. And here you can see I'm the author. I have a collaborative feature. I can add a student name and have more than one student involved with this if I wanted to, so we could collaborate on this Google Earth project. I'm going to make one now. I like to use the word sandbox when I create things because that reminds me later on that I can delete this. This is just for fun, exclamation point. Now down here, I've got a few tools and also tutorial features. So the tutorials are quick little videos that show you some of the things I'm going to share. Those are useful to direct students to. I got a new feature here. Let's start with my full screen slide. That'll be my intro slide. It will be, welcome to my sandbox. Right, and some story about it. This is a place to try out cool stuff. Probably 2 F's there, right? Okay, good. Background imagery. I can grab an image of a background image I might like off of my computer. I can do a Google image search. Maybe I'll do a Google Earth. That'd be kind of meta, right? Picture of Google Earth to go with my Google Earth. Let's do something like that. That's a nice looking one. Notice when we're using this, it's also linked to my account. So when I do an image ad on here, it says only select images that you have confirmed you have a license to use. When you do that with your school account, sometimes that changes a little bit and it talks about Creative Commons licensing. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add that in there. And we'll scroll down a little bit more. And I think that looks pretty good. Let's try the preview. And we'll leave it right there. Let's take a look at what it looks like. Okay, so here's my opening slide to my story. Welcome to my sandbox. This is a place to try cool stuff. Table of contents. And notice it looks a little bit like what we saw with the Voyager Stories. So now I'll go back and I'll walk through back again. It's automatically saving. I'll add a new feature. I'll also add a place mark. All right, so we're going to drop a pin. Maybe we'll put that pin right here in Lake Ontario, close to where I live. So I'll put Lake Ontario. All right, hit save. And now the image is going to stay this high up. This is the image that I've locked. So now if I want it to be zoomed in on Lake Ontario, I'm going to go something like this, and I'll zoom in, kind of like I was doing with the 2D and 3D. And I will add a new feature, and I'll add another place mark and say, the shores of Lake Ontario. So now the image will start out, and then at the next point, as you can see on the left, it goes in. So let's take a look at what that looks like right now. So again, we're out here, and you'll see my table of contents now has 3 things. I can jump to each one or go through it chronologically. The history teacher of me loves to go through it chronologically. So here we go, bear with me. So we'll go next. It'll start way up. Right, there's Lake Ontario. Okay, then my next feature is going to zip me right down to the shores of Lake Ontario. Perfect, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to use my back arrow. Perfect, and you see over here, I could actually adjust the order if I wanted to. I can move these up and down. The adjusting and the moving up and down, when I've done this collaboratively with students, that's a bit wonky. It's good to have these laid out, and then a student can go in and they can edit individual ones while they're there. That seems to be the best workflow. So for example, if I wanted to edit this one, I could click the pencil, and I could edit here and make some changes like, let's say I put a star here instead, and I can scroll down and change things like the color of it. So make it a red star. So you see it's red over here now. If a student is doing that on their screen and another student is editing on a different screen, that seems in a different point, that seems to be the best workflow. If they start adding and organizing in this screen, that seems to mess things up a bit, at least in my experience. All right, cool. So let's do a liner shape. So I'm going to trace out the lake here. I'll zip right down to this big lake here, one of our really big freshwater lakes here in the northeast of the US. And I'll draw a line around it. So here's my starting point. And notice this looks a lot like what we were doing earlier when we were measuring that island in Miami. Very, very similar. So we're just doing this real loose. Remember, I can always go back and make this more exact by clicking on these individual features, and I'll call it outline of the lake, and save it. And so this is the view and the image that will appear when the viewer goes here. If I want to add some information about the lake, I could go back to Lake Ontario, and I can hit the pencil. And notice it says, what do you want to add? I could click here. I'm going back to a point, right? Google image search, Lake Ontario, beautiful big lake, right? So, something like that looks a little bit more beautiful than different times of year here in the winter. Small info box or big info box. Now this is interesting. If you look at preview presentation, small info box looks here and text content will be below it. With my students, we made a decision. We did a project to make them all the same, and the students really liked the large info box. So when you hit present information, you see the large info box is there, and I could put multiple pictures in the screen on the right, and then lots of text-based content there as well. You could also embed a YouTube video if that was helpful for what you were working on. So here a student can tell a geographic story using these features. Right, cool. We can search a place if we have trouble finding, can't remember where something is. My father has a boat on Sackett's Harbor, so I could look up Sackett's Harbor if I couldn't remember where it is. I always misspell that. Drop a pin over there, so now we're zipping down to Sackett's Harbor, New York. Just like that. And now over here on the right, I can add this scene to the project. So I'll click Add to Project and hit Save. And now Sackett's Harbor is added. You'll see it's at the bottom. And if I wanted to tell my story in a certain order, I could remove that. Again, I'll pull all the way back out now. So there's our planet, beautiful blue planet. And I'll hit Present. Welcome to Sandbox. So I'm looking, actually, oops, I hit Edit. I'll hit Present. And we're going to start at our sandbox. We're going to go to Lake Ontario, beautiful freshwater lake. You can see where it is as it correlates to North America. We'll zip right down to the middle of the lake here, or the shore of the lake, near Rochester, New York. I'll hit the next one. It's a little bit higher out, so now you can see the outline that we drew. And then finally, we'll go to Sackett's Harbor, and that textual Wikipedia content pops right up on the corner. It's a harbor for entrance to the lake. So this brings us to some really cool stuff, a lot of possibilities with Google Earth. I really strongly encourage you to check out the Voyager stories, especially as inspiration. I think one of the best workflows for this type of project is to have students start with Voyager stories, look through things that are in here and how they relate to the students' content that you're teaching in class, and then ask them to think about how they could demonstrate understanding using their own project builder and go much beyond what's already here. It's kind of cool to see them build on some existing content and to take it to a whole new world. As I leave you, I have one thing I wanted to share out of order, of course, and that is one of my favorite Voyager stories that I think speaks to the power of a broad audience, and that is the Sesame Street stories. So here, Sesame Street, girls around the world. I've got 2 daughters. This is great for them. I love it. As we explore, we can see what Sesame Street looks like all over the world. And now this might seem elementary, but this could also be fascinating for conversations about social and cultural norms in different places on the planet, a kind of conversation that might be more important or relevant to our older students. For example, if I click Afghanistan, I have the Sesame Street intro that students or children would see in Afghanistan. So if I click this and I hit play, you'll get Sesame Street, Afghanistan. So this is awesome for helping students to understand how their world is different and similar to other people's worlds. I hope you enjoyed looking at Google Earth with me. It's one of my favorite things. And I really thought that at this time when many of us are trying to help our students synthesize information at a distance or locally, this is a really great tool for that. Thank you. Bye.